woods to soft woods, common woods, less common woods, rare woods, how they're used, what situations you would use them in, certain situations you would not use them in, thicknesses, widths of wood used in different structures for different purposes, whether in joists, as an example, or in rafters, etc. So by default, you learn certain things. So I've always said this, and what I recognize over the years, like say, if someone is over the years studying the Bible, as an example, and they've literally made a business out of it, you know, and they've been collecting finance from people over the years, and they get degrees. And if you're studying, we're not talking about people who are playing these emotional games, pretending to be so-called erudite. But if you're studying, there's no way you can study the Bible and not learn Septuagintus. They're your first Bibles. You see what I'm trying to say? Mm-hmm. And this is why you see me will say when people, if someone's just talking casually on the corner or something like that, right? You can kind of give them a little leeway. But when someone puts up a sign and takes on a title of imam, pastor, rabbi, you know, bishop, reverend, those titles are PhDs. All those titles are adepts. And so if you say you're a carpenter and someone charges you with violating the use of a saw, then you say, well, some of us don't know what a saw is. If you said you're a carpenter, you can be held to having the responsibility to know what a saw and a hammer is. And so I say, anyone who studies religion and gets into it and makes it a business, and you've been in it for years, these things come across your path by default. Now, what you find is that when people start discovering these things, what they do is they start looking at the sociological positions that they're in, the vestments that they're in, the finance and the schoolings that they paid for, the buildings that they mortgaged, and etc. And they make decisions that if they tell the truth, the stuff collapses. And that's what I'm saying when I say that they know, because it's like you can't not know. You know, it's like you can't become a diver and a swimmer and never heard of H2O, never know what current is, don't know what tides are, as an example, if you get the point. Mm-hmm. Some of them don't know that water's wet. Well, I ain't playing that game no more. And I think because over the years we've been always making excuses for people is another reason why we're where we are right now. A robber don't know he robbing you, but he always happens to rob you, but he never gives it back. Well, he didn't know he was robbing me. Well, stop. You know, this is where I am with that. That's why I say that. Okay. Because by default you learn, if you get the point. If you're involved in it, by default you learn. And we need, if somebody say they're a surgeon and they've been cutting people's heads, hold them to their claim. They put a sign out there and they took a penny. If they took a penny, they're responsible. And it's called the rule of color. And the rule of color in law has always been this: no one who rules in government, no one who takes a position of authority or takes a position of trust can ever say they do not know the law, for it is their responsibility by organized principle to take an oath on the very principles of law that they are held in trust to do. Therefore, ignorance of the law is never excused, and particularly for anyone who takes a position of rulership. Therefore, the priesthood is not forgiven. They can forgive themselves, but the divine does not forgive.
Here's a question, kind of heavy, and I've gotten a lot of calls on this type of subject.
Oh, I can understand it.
Scroogy Doyle wants to know, what do you do if your spouse is ignorant, willingly so, but there's a child involved? Should one leave to pursue this calling to truth?
Keep this in mind. The willingness to leave should be converted into the willingness to teach. That's my answer.
Makes sense. You know, I tell people, because I get a lot of calls where they'll say, you know, my significant other, my maid or something, they totally aren't for it. Had a conversation today with someone who says they would never, they're probably on here, never marry because they can't find any. They wouldn't
Well, I can understand that too.
Find someone who would understand, and this is, so important to them. But I always say, if you're in a relationship and your significant other and the family members and whatever aren't for it, that doesn't mean that you stop your pursuit of knowledge. If you came in here by yourself, you don't necessarily have to leave, but you need to be able to pursue your study, because there is somebody out there who's going to want to listen to you. It may not be in your household, but
isn't this interesting how what we're really discussing right now in this instance is the result of truth not being exposed. And it's a result of the contamination of humanity done by the priesthood by design. How we handle it is going to be determined by each of us in our own circumstance. You also may have to look at, and I don't promote it, but I comprehend what's going on. You know how, like the Septuagint say, if your right arm offend you, cut it off. But if you choose to do so, make sure that you do everything with moral, fair, and balanced determination. That there be no karmic response, in the sense that it is not predicated on any selfish or unfair motive. However, the other problem, because these are real problems that people are dealing with, because these what you call destructive platforms, even in social relationships, were by design. And again, if we're not willing to start telling the truth, this stuff is going to fall apart anyway. So my position is, look, you're in a battle that you're going to lose if you don't fix it. So if you're going to get robbed, put up a fight. That's my point. Because you're dealing with spiritual and physical robbery right now. And it's becoming open, meaning they're not even playing put the glove on anymore. They just walk you up, punch you right in the eye, and take your stuff, and then claim to be your government.
Now, I'm not sure.
And don't care whether you recognize it or not. Meanwhile, they're willing to kill you off and your children as you become less useful to them, which is really what they're doing. So now what you going to do?
I don't know whether I missed this question or if this is the question, because the person, this Knee Relief Chronicle, is saying, Dr. G, please answer question. Didn't say ask. Answer question about wooden energy totem and violent trauma spots of hybrids killing Moors like early 1900s Niagara Falls massacre.
Yeah.
I don't know whether.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know whether there was a question asked
because
earlier.
It's a structure. It's kind of, the way it's structured. You don't know what's.
I don't know whether they're saying I asked the question up here and you missed it.
Well, I
didn't see it, so you'd have to put it back.
From implications, from what I'm reading from implications, this is for people who may not get it. Many of the matriarchs, and we in general, in the land of Nod, and in the upper reaches of the atomic lakes, would meditate. Would use those areas for meditation. And so the Niagara Falls area, or coming off the lakes, etc., was where for thousands of years we had our meetings, confederations, and meditations, etc., on multiple levels. It's just simply a social part of our structure here, which is also why the hybrids focused on murdering or sacrificing a lot of the Moabitises there, killing off the matriarchy. Um, and a lot of the hybrids would mock it by saying they would call Niagara Falls Nigger Falls, etc. You know, where they chop their heads off, steal their gold, their silver, stuff like that, and throw them over the falls. And as you know, with the rebellion that took place in that area, this is where the hybrids also corrupted the history of the massacre in that area, and that's where they started with some persons claiming to be Jews, but not Jews, who took over and converted the Niagara movement into what is known as the NAACP,
Yeah.
and coloring our people and putting them under a color of law. And this is why you see persons who are part of that platform of thinking refer to our people as persons of color, part of the priesthood spell cast. So let's go into the law and see what they mean by people of color or colored people, colored persons. And this is back to maintenance of hell on earth. And this is where, you know, they keep doing this conversion or telling or saying things to mean something that they do not mean. And then our people take it and actually are casting spells on themselves and don't know that they're casting spells on themselves. And this is, again, why we do what we do. Colored. And then we're going to go into colored. So when you're talking about the social engineering of the executors and the Roman Curia members who took over the movement of Niagara, and this includes the nature of, so that people could understand the operations of the executors' operations, what they did when they did the bombing in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to steal the wealthy bank of the Moors, the last vestige of the wealthy banks when they bombed Tulsa, Oklahoma. So let's deal with colored. Now, color, when they call our people people of color, color is a semblance, a simulacrum, or a simulacrum as distinguished from that which is real. I repeat, color means an appearance, a semblance, or simulacrum as distinguished from that which is real, a prima facie, or an apparent right, hence a deceptive appearance, a plausible assumed exterior, concealing a lack of reality. Colored. By common usage in America, so they're giving you geographical, political, jurisdictional operations. By common usage in America, this term, colored, in such phrases as quote unquote colored persons, quote unquote the colored race, quote unquote colored men, and the like, is used to designate Negroes or persons of the African race, including all persons of mixed blood descendant from Negro ancestry, etc. But where a state constitution provided for separate schools for the white and colored races, notice that these are terms, social terms, the term white race was held to be limited to the Caucasian race, and the term, quote unquote, colored races, quote unquote, was held to embrace all other races. And then they will give you law case references in relationship to arguments brought before the court. And it has been held that there is no, it has been held that there is no legal, technical signification to the phrase, quote unquote, colored persons, which the court are bound judicially to know. So that means from a position of law, the court don't even acknowledge it because it's a social engineering term and it's a fraud and it's a fake. And it deals with artificial persons, maskings, prima facie semblances distinguished from that which is real and is used to cover up or to color an issue or being. There you go. And so when they took over the Niagara movement, they covered it up with a whole new reconstructed sociological paradigm called colored persons. Now, doesn't that also fit the paradigm of them operating with the straw, man of straw, 14th Amendment concept of the monkey, Negro, troglodyte nigger, sociology, and claiming it to be a part of the human race when in fact it deals with the Pangidae, hybrid Anthropopithecus, and we accept it as African identity, which had absolutely nothing to do with, but had to do with social engineering. So you can look at their administration and maintenance of hell on earth, because you have a whole multiple layers of generations of people that think that when someone says persons of color, that they're doing you some kind of metaphysical favor of Afrocentric spirituality when they just called you a fake artificial person outside of the human family. And it's been controlled since 1909 under what is called the NAACP, and has been promoted for generations as a liberation front when actually it's a front of covering up the history and the loss of a state of the Aboriginal people, particularly in that territory.
Okay.
And
Missy B. Wiggins says her family thinks she's going to hell because she doesn't go to church anymore.
Well, we just told you what hell is.
Yeah.
And we're all in hell, and they are too.
Let me just see if there are any.
And tell her go to Law Dictionary and learn what hell really is. We just told you what it is. So go back and review, and then do your research and share that with your family. You know, because they need to know. And also, with people having difficulty with their family members who think they have been to church, give them this. You do the research and share with them, and give them this question. Ask them to not give you an emotional or judgmental response, but to tell the truth and give you, written by their own hands, an explanation of the Niceno-Constantinopolitan Creed that they have been promoting in the name of the church.
Here's a question. Certain hybrid Europeans, possibly justifiably labeled as sovereign citizens within their respective venues discussing, quote unquote, all things law, frequently self-proclaim and essentially confer nationality upon themselves, renouncing their current citizenship status and self-proclaim to be Americans. When privileged to be party and observer of these discussions, is it necessary to attempt to correct them and rebut their claims as being such, and also provide them an alternative remedy?
Well, the remedy was already in place. Wasn't the remedy in place with the treaties that they breached before being brought into the constitutional fold of government isn't part of the problems and aren't many of the problems that they're experiencing now because they breached the Constitution, which includes the treaties that supersede the Constitution, as expressed in Article 3 and Article 6, and that in fact they know that they are hybrids. Now that's not a negative for them, but are they descendants of colonists at America? And didn't they stop telling the people the truth? And now it is the lies and the misrepresentation that have been presented for the reconstruction operations against Aboriginal people, and particularly expressed in the philosophy page of John D. Rockefeller and Frederick T. Gates operations and Skull and Bones operations expressed via the General Education Board of 1902. And those of you who are sharing here with us tonight at House of Reawakening Minds, when you get a chance, you can go in the public record and look at the philosophy page of the General Education Board, and you can see how they used docility operations as a weapon against us. Now the problem that they have is the lies that they have told is now destroying them. So you see a lot of the hybrid Europeans are trying to tell a lot of the truths to save their estates. But are the estates that they're trying to save theirs, or is that stolen estates under colonial operations? So again, let's go to Webster's dictionary, right? And it's for those who don't know, let's see who the Americans are. And I comprehend why you're saying what you're saying, but the conditions of what's taking place on the planet right now, it kind of sort of like a oxymoron in the social engineering paradigm. They lied and told the people that America's a country, America's a continent. Is that correct? So it's opposite, right? But they do and formulated a private human trafficking corporation in Austria called Trading American Trading Company, right? Now, so they've been promoting since 1861 that their corporation is the country that the operatives of their corporation colonized and have been systematically through the Roman Curia members of the Circle Church and Chancery of the Bar Association, British Accredited Registry, have been overthrowing the Republic, of which they have been profitable members. And you have a whole so-called bevy of so-called barratry law firms across the land that's been privateering and raping the people economically to this very day. Is that not true? It certainly is. Then you have a bunch of POW camps that are run by them. They've been packing the prisons with our people to the tune of 80 to 90%. Isn't that true also? So now that many of them are being sacrificed by the dark priesthood who are being dismantled, etc., so they want to make this sovereign citizen argument. Well, they're not citizens of a country, they're citizens of the corporation. Because the people of the land would be known as nationals. Internationally, when you're dealing with categories of citizens, and you all can look this up, it will be categorized from AA, which would be the nationals. Then you have A1 to A19, which would be citizens and persons of alien status on different purposes of operating or doing business territorially or in jurisdictional operations of any particular nation state. So which are they? Because they certainly ain't Americans if they are hybrid Europeans. So American, a native of America originally. If it's originally, it still is. Originally applied to the aboriginal or copper colored races. So they used to do the paper bag test, the brown paper bag test, and they used to do the copper penny test to exclude the true Americans from the benefits of organized government since they were colonizing us. Uh, so now they're claiming to be the copper complexion, swarthy people. Who are the Americans? Are they the Aboriginal? If they're not the Aboriginal, can they be Americans? Uh, let logic answer that question. So you need not argue with anyone to argue about who Americans are. You just need to get our people to stop claiming to be somebody that they're not and to claim their birthright and start help fixing this thing. Now, for them, and sovereign citizen is an oxymoron because the citizen is a person of the corporate construct. Now they can be a civilian. Now then you got to name who that civilian is because at any given time you may have, according to A1 to A19, different peoples of different nation states territorially operating anywhere on the planet as it always has been. And then so you'll be arguing what their nationality is. Now, do you hear anyone in Africa on that side of Africa talking about the African sovereign or African nation? African's a continent, and then you have multiple jurisdictions of tribes and nation states at that particular jurisdictional territory. Same thing goes with Europe. Same thing goes with Asia. So, in a way, it gives presents the dynamics and the paradigms for multiple levels of studying to dissect the artificiality of the social engineering that's operative right now. And so, when you see them talking about American or sovereign citizen, if you imply citizen, citizen would imply nation state. So now, in national and international law, you must name the nation. And the United States is not a nation. The United States is a corporation that's also bankrupt. So this is why when you look at legislation under the board of directors for the United States Corporation, that U.S. citizens can't contest their operations. Why? Because they are citizens and beneficiaries of the constructed fraud. So you can't be that and contest it. That's the fact. That's why they're trying to claim to be Americans. But if they're Americans, now are they Moors? If they ain't Moors, they can't claim to be Americans. They're in a conundrum right now, aren't they? And so is our people. This is part of what we together must start working out in our social relationships with each other to start cleaning up Midgard, because this is part of the problems of them managing hell at Midgard. So this social corruption and social solace systems and the institutions that have been put in place and the misclassifications of citizenships and the alterations of the Nationalization Act by Grant 1790, etc., when they altered that, also with the Horace Greeley operations at Philadelphia with the convention of the Whigamores and the Cotton Whigs and the Conscience Whigs deciding to call the hybrid descendants of Europeans, hybrid Europeans, white people, which is a legal status that did not belong to them. Now, all of those chickens, like Brother Malcolm said, are coming home to roost because they've been going to and fro the earth, devouring nations, and now they've lost their sovereignty. However, to claim sovereignty, you must be what? You must be in divine order, in harmony with nature's law and nature's God, as expressed in the Declaration of Independence, as expressed in its being adopted from the Aboriginal people, with divine hermetic principles of law and governance, etc., that they have pretty much rejected in their processes of robbing us, the Aboriginal people, who they branded Negroes, blacks, and coloreds and Latinos. And now they want to be sovereign. They can't be sovereign unless they're home. So when you're talking anywhere on at Midgard in a jurisdictional issue relative to impropria persona principle, can't be impropria persona and then claim to be something that you're not. The same way that our people cannot be impropria persona, claim to be somebody that they're not. So you don't have to tell them what you need to do, and what we all need to do is start fixing our family members who are still in that gray area of fear of being themselves because these same Romans keep doing stuff to them. And this is part of the social fabric that's actually falling apart here at North America. So actually look at it as an issue on the table of social studies. Because in studying it, we can correct a lot of things among our people because it gives you insight to what they're dealing with now. Just like a lot of law cases, whereas they're being sued, they're instituting Federal Rule 12b-6, diversity of nationality when it's convenient for them, but you don't see them teaching that to our people, do you? So take that in consideration. I yield the floor.
Sherry Lynn says, I thought the U.S. was dissolved on January 20th, 2021 at 12 noon.
U.S. was dissolved 1861. You know, I'm just showing you how their corruption continues, and they keep kicking what they call kicking the can down the road. They keep on violating the treaties and violating Constitution, and then keep on operating under color while calling everyone else colored. You know, just like we talk about, you know, so many people make not that it's not valid. They'll make, you know, the economic corruption here. They'll keep talking about Jekyll Island and then not talk about the coup d'etat in 1861. You see the point? The Organic Act of Congress. And then they'll keep talking about Washington, D.C. being the Capitolium when they know that the Capitolium was